So this is a little old, but last month the Messianic Manic and Inspiring Philosophy got into it on abortion, and the Messianic Manic responded with the autonomy argument for abortion. I know I'm a little late to the party, but I'd like to throw my 2 cents in on this. So let's see what the Messianic Manic has to say.
A 3-month-old or 3-year-old doesn't have to push its way through anyone's birth canal against their will in order to continue their existence.
No. If you put the kid in there in the first place through your own actions, you have accepted responsibility for the kid's gestation. Parents do not have the right to shirk their parental responsibilities before their children are born any more than they do after they are born. This is why we have such things as parental neglect laws. Furthermore, if you kill the kid because you do not want to take care of the kid's needs, or in this case gestation, we call you Casey Anthony and put you on trial. As for this, let me present a thought experiment to illustrate just how absurd this sort of thinking is. Imagine for a moment that you caused a car accident and that the person you hit had to go to the hospital as a result. In the accident, the person's kidneys were damaged and he now requires a transplant. Only there are no organs available. If he does not get the transplant, he will die as a result of the car accident, and you will now be charged with negligent manslaughter. The only way out of this is for you to donate a kidney to the person you put in the hospital. Sure, no one is forcing you to donate the kidney, but if you do not, the person will die as a result of your actions in the car accident, and you will be charged with negligent manslaughter. Even though you will not be charged with not donating your kidney, by not taking responsibility for your mistakes, your not donating your kidney will effectively cause you to be charged. Likewise, the mother put the child in the womb in the first place, and by comparison, her not bringing the child to gestation will result in the child's death. The mother is no less culpable for the death of the child in this case than is the car driver being charged with negligent manslaughter in the thought experiment. But now let's change up the thought experiment a bit. Suppose instead of donating your kidneys, a judge orders you to pay for the victim's hospital bill. Because you see this as an attack on your financial autonomy, just as pro-choicers would argue that the parental responsibility to gestate the child is an attack on the mother's bodily autonomy, you decide to kill the hospitalized victim so as to protect yourself from this so-called attack on your financial autonomy. If you do this, however, you will no longer be charged with negligent manslaughter. Instead, you will be charged with murder 1. Even at a more fundamental level, the notion of autonomy, bodily or otherwise, trumping one's right to live, can be seen to obviously fail. Consider, for instance, another thought experiment, wherein an unwanted stowaway is discovered aboard a private jet at 30,000 feet. The jet is its owner's property and thereby is an extension of its owner. As such, the decisions over the jet and its allowed occupants are subject to the autonomy of the jet's owner. However, if the jet's owner decided to throw the stowaway out of the plane, leaving the person to plummet to his or her death, the jet owner would still be charged with murder. Given the obvious parallels between the jet owner and his plane, and the mother and her womb, killing a child in abortion would be just as much murder as throwing the stowaway out of the plane. The fact that personal autonomy is used as an excuse would not negate this fact in either scenario. So to argue from one's bodily autonomy that abortion is all right is as ludicrous as arguing from one's autonomy over one's property that throwing people out of one's private aircraft is all right. Now, when I raised these points in the comments, the Messianic Manic responded that forcing people to give birth is cruel and unusual punishment. Since when is forcing people to be responsible parents cruel and unusual punishment? Seriously, give me a break. That's not cruel and unusual punishment. What is cruel and unusual punishment, however, is what happens to the kids abortive parents kill. To be quite frank, any parents who would do something this awful to their children would actually deserve to be punished. And hopefully a potential Trump presidency would do exactly that.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't
what?
know. That I don't know.
Now lastly, there is this bit I was going to quote from TMM's video to IP, but I found it better summarized in an older video of his regarding secular arguments against abortion.
The mother can relinquish responsibility for the child after birth, and I think she should be able to relinquish responsibility before birth. Parenting is a responsibility that shouldn't be forced on anyone, and in my opinion, childbirth shouldn't be forced on anyone either.
Now, this is a bad argument. The entire point of things being responsibilities is exactly that they should be forced. This is precisely what makes them responsibilities in the first place, rather than exemptions. One is by definition not exempt from one's responsibilities. Parents are forced to not neglect their children after birth, and this is why we have such things as parental neglect laws. Likewise, they have no business neglecting their responsibilities and killing their children before birth. This is just a natural property of all responsibilities. Responsibilities or duties are what we morally owe another, and as such we do not have a right to reject responsibilities. So-called rights that ignore this are just socially fabricated synthetic rights and not actual rights. And that includes the so-called right to an abortion. If you like this video, subscribe and support me on Patreon. And don't forget to check out the books in my Alaris novel series, Alaris, The Lances of Light, and Alaris, The Pearl of Heaven, on Amazon Kindle in the description below. You can find us on Facebook as well, at Idealism and Science versus Atheism.